Girivaradari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Thank you. Yes. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Ashtotara Shuddha Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Ashtotara Shuddha Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavarinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sikhaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Yamuna Maya Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Creative Impetus. Chapter 18, the residents of Jambudvip offer prayers. Text 4. Please repeat after me. Vadanti Vishwam Kavayaha Sma Nashwaram Pashanti Chadyatma Vidho vipaschitaha tatapi muyanti tavaja māyā subhismitam krityam ajam nato smitam. Okay, so you almost ready? Do you have it pulled up on your phone, Dimitri? At least we could have one person chat. 5184. Vadanti Vishwam Kavayasmanashvaram Pashyanti Charyatmavado Vipaschita Tatapi Muyanti Tavaja Māyā Suvismitam Kritnyamajam Natosmitam Vadanti Vishwam Kavayasmanashvaram Pashyanti Charyatmavado Vipaschita Tatapi Muyanti Tavaja Māyā Suvismitam Krityamajam Natosmitam Vadanti Vishwam Kavayasmanashvaram Pashyanti Charyatmavado Vipaschita Tatapi Muyanti Tavaja Māyā Suvismitam Krityamajam Natosmitam Vadanti, they say authoritatively, Vishwam, the entire material creation, Kavayaha, great learned sages, Sma, certainly, Nashvaram, perishable, Pashyanti, they see in trance, Cha, also, Vadyatmavidaha, who have realized spiritual knowledge, Vipashtitaha, very learned scholars, Tata api, still, Muyanti, become illusioned, Tava, your, Aja, O unborn one, Māyā, by the illusory energy, Suvispitam, most wonderful, Krityam, activity, Ajam, unto the Supreme Unborn One. Natas asmi, I offer my obeisances. Tam, unto him. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, HG Bhakti Swami Prabhupada. O Unborn One, learned Vedic scholars who are advanced in spiritual knowledge certainly know that this material world is perishable, as do other logicians and philosophers. In trance, they realize the factual position of this world, and they preach the truth as well. Yet, even they are sometimes bewildered by your illusory energy. This is your own wonderful pastime. Therefore, I can understand that your leisure energy is very wonderful. And I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport. Not only does the leisure energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead act on the conditioned soul within this material world, but sometimes it also acts on the most advanced learned scholars, who factually know the constitutional position of this material world through realization. As soon as someone thinks, I am this material body, aham ameti, and everything in relationship with this material body is mine, he is an illusion, moha. This illusion caused by the material energy acts especially on the conditioned souls, but it sometimes also acts on liberated souls as well. A liberated soul is a person who has sufficient knowledge of this material world and is therefore unattached to the bodily conception of life. But because of association with the modes of material nature for a very long time, even liberated souls sometimes become captivated by the illusory energy due to inattentiveness in the transcendental position. Therefore, Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 7:14, Mam eva ye prapadyante māyā me tam tirantite. Only those who surrender unto me can overcome the influence of the material energy. Therefore, no one should think of himself as a liberated person immune to the influence of māyā. Everyone should very cautiously execute devotional service by rigidly following regulative principles. Thus he will remain fixed at the lotus feet of the Lord. Otherwise, a little inattention will create havoc. We have already seen an example of this in the case of Maharaj Bharat. Maharaj Bharat was undoubtedly a great devotee, but because he turned his attention slightly toward a small deer, he had to suffer 2 more births, one as a deer and another as the Brahman Jad Bharat. Afterward, he was liberated and went back home, back to Godhead. The Lord is always prepared to excuse his devotee. But if a devotee takes advantage of the Lord's leniency and purposely commits mistakes again and again, the Lord will certainly punish him by letting him fall down into the clutches of the illusory energy. In other words, theoretical knowledge acquired by studying the Vedas is insufficient to protect one from the clutches of māyā. One must strongly adhere to the lotus feet of the Lord in devotional service. Then one's position is secure. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshularamalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Kadivāchalam Pangam Langate Gidim Yakripatamaham Bande Shri Gurandinitaranam Vancha Kabudribhishcha Kripa Sindhubevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gauda Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Translation again. O unborn one, learned Vedic scholars who are advanced in spiritual knowledge certainly know that this material world is perishable, as do other logicians and philosophers. In chance, they realize the factual position of this world, and they preach to the truth as well. Yet even they are sometimes bewildered by your illusory energy. This is your own wonderful pastime. Therefore, I can understand that your illusory energy is very wonderful, and I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. So there was one famous Christian monk, which means he was living a pure life, a chaste life, a life of renunciation, a life devoid of material engagement in many ways. One being, of course, he was very strict in his association with women, means he didn't really closely associate with women, what to speak of, wife, girlfriend, or anything like that. And he was famous for this, living a life of self-control and renunciation. And he also wrote many books, well-known books that were read by many people and inspired many people. And yeah, I mean, he was a very he was known to be a very thoughtful man. And he actually was. I've looked at some of his writings, and they're good. And then later on in his life, he came down with some type of sickness, and he was admitted to a hospital and suffering, struggling. And he had, and there was one woman there who was a worker there, and she was, just part of the hospital staff, and she was taking care of him. And he was there for some time, and then, yeah, somehow or other, he just really, he really became attracted to her. And she became attracted to him. And despite him being all of his, they say those who are famous or well-known, what do they say? Disgrace is worse than death. Right? Krishna mentions that in the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, trying to encourage him to fight. So despite him being aware of his reputation for living a life of self-control, renunciation, and being a famous author, and so many years of practice, right? Despite all that, he was still very attracted. And there's one thing to be attracted, but then to control it. Because someone may be attracted, but they control it. Means a person may feel, wow, I'm feeling a lot of attraction for this person. And they may know that the other person's feeling attraction for them. But they control it means they don't go any farther. That's it. Okay, I'm feeling attraction. Okay, you're feeling attraction. See you later. Like His Holiness Radhanath Swami tells about himself, about how when he was a young man, making his way to India, and he had 2 cases which were kind of intense in this regard. I won't go into the latter one, but the more, you could say, sattvic, or which a lot of people would fall for, which I've brought up, I think, sometime here in class, some time ago. But anyways, it's a good story. But anyways, there was a girl, a young girl, and she was just perfect from all, of course. The perception that people have is she's perfect. Of course, no one's perfect, and right, just give the right circumstance or time or whatever, and everything seems dreamy, right? But things could turn into a nightmare really quick. Anyways, but from a lot of people's perspective, or most people's perspective, she just seemed perfect. Just very cultured, very beautiful, and not in a kind of super rajasic way, like people think of beauty, the beauty of a woman in a super rajasic way, but beautiful and cultured and interested in higher topics and knowledge and living a good life and just everything, funny and everything. So materially and spiritually. And then they were talking, young Richard, before he became Radhanath, so they're talking and they're associating, and she was pretty much more or less proposing to him, let's spend our life together, and I understand if you don't respond to my letter, that means that you rejected me, this and that. And he just didn't respond, and he just kept on going. So he may have been feeling some attraction, she was feeling attraction, but he just kept on going. And that's what a person who is leading a life of renunciation should do. Of course, best if they do not feel any heavy attraction. But in the case they do, then they need to keep on going. Just like if you're committed, for example, if you're a man and you're committed to a woman, means in a religious marriage, right? You may feel attraction to another woman, and Prabhupada mentions that in the Bhagavad Gita. Actually, in purports, he says that general tendency of men is they want to enjoy with more than one woman, they want to enjoy with numerous, actually. So, what to speak of low-class men, or untrained, or whatever. So you could say the general tendency may be that, but if someone's committed in a relationship, they may feel attraction, and the woman may feel attraction, because there's all types of this stuff going on. So, but the man will say, no. Or he doesn't go any further. However he says, whether he walks away, runs away, says no, says see you later, whatever it is, he makes it clear to himself and to the particular woman that I'm out of here. Like, I have nothing to do with this, even though he may be attracted. That's what it means to be committed. So similarly, for a person in the renounced order, or for a person who's living a life of renunciation, if they're committed to that, they say, no, I may be feeling attraction, but no, I'm not going any further. So this particular Christian monk, despite having a lot of knowledge, actually, and someone may say he was, as it's being mentioned here, learned scholars and philosophers and logicians and people have realized I'm not this material body, right? So despite knowing all this, he had an option. Okay, what am I going to do? I'm feeling attraction, she's feeling attraction. I could say, see you later, bye-bye. Or I could fall into this trap. Because for a person in his situation, that's exactly what it is. It's a trap. And he fell for it. Fell in the trap. And many people after that, of course, wrote articles about him and even books about him, about his being such a great personality and his fall down into illusion, just as it's being mentioned in the Bhagavatam about Bharat Maharaj, right? So people talk, right? Try to learn. Or sometimes people are just critics, they're just criticizing. So anyways, they wrote about him this and that, and yeah, he fell. And it's an interesting point because you have Bharat Maharaj also become attracted to a deer, means as a pet to take care of, like a father figure. So this little attraction that they felt, you could say the evil is not so much in feeling the attraction, but the evil is not stopping or going full force, full forward in those desires. That's the problem. I could say the sin is not so much in falling down, but it's in staying down and not getting up. So they sin in the sense that, okay, you could say it's a sin, they're feeling some selfish attraction, but that's not so much the sin. The real thing is, okay, what do they do after that? If they go full force, then that's the real problem. And that was the problem with Bharat Maharaj. Of course, he's a great devotee, and that was a problem with this Christian monk, is that they just went forward with it. Just like you have the story of a man who's in the renounced order, and another man. They're two buddies walking together, and then there was some young woman who was there on, so these two persons in the renounced order and this young woman, they're on one side of the river and they were going to cross, and the woman said, "Please help me." And the man said, "Yeah, hop on my back." So he carried her across, he sat her down, and then these two men kept on walking. And one of the men was just like really fuming, specifically the one who didn't carry the woman on the back. He was fuming. And eventually he just spoke up. He said, "I can't believe you did that. Like, we're in the renounced order of life, and you carried this woman on your back. You're not supposed to do that. That's against, Manu Samhita, that's against this, that's against that. Like, this is sinful." And then the person who carried the woman on the back, he said, I carried her for 5 minutes. Like, you've been carrying her for the last 45 minutes, or the last hour in your mind. But the thing is, if that man who carried her on his back put her down and said, "Yeah, you want to continue walking with us?" And then they kept on walking and talking and walking and talking. And then alongside that other man was really fuming. "I can't believe this person is walking with this woman and we're in the renounced order, and he keeps on talking all these intimate details." I mean, it's not gross, but unnecessary talking. And they keep on going. And then they exchange numbers and they communicate with each other regularly, and all different types of detail. This, in other words, just way too close, getting way too close. And then there's problems, because a person may not be attracted immediately, right? I mean, of course, if someone may be attracted immediately. And sometimes they may be attracted immediately, and sometimes they may be a little bit more self-controlled, or a little bit more in the mode of goodness. Like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, the modes are always fighting for dominance, right? So sometimes we're in the mode of ignorance or passion, we're more attracted, or sometimes in goodness, less attracted. But whether we're in the mode of goodness or passion or ignorance in any particular given time, if a person keeps on closely associating with or looking or whatever, then they will become attracted, because that's a law of nature, and that's what it means to be conditioned. That upon meditating, we have to become attracted, although we may not be attracted immediately. Just like this Christian monk, it's not that he was, I suspect, and it was not that immediately he was attracted. It was over time. She was taking care of him, speaking very sweet, nice words, right? Charming, and so on. And then he fell. After some time, it wasn't immediate. Similarly with Bharat Maharaj, it's not that immediately Bharat Maharaj captured this deer and then he immediately fell in māyā. Like, okay, Krishna's out of my mind, right? But over time, he was meditating and doing the sadhana, and the deer was wanting attention more and more and more, and then gradually he forgot, and then he fell down. So, we may not be attracted immediately, but over meditation it happens. Dayato Vishayan Pungsa Sangase Subhajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Krodha Bijayate, that upon meditation on the senses, this attachment develops, right? And it's a whole downward spiral from there. And until one can somehow or other, by the mercy of the spiritual master, by the mercy of Krishna, until we could recondition ourselves to meditate on that which is worth meditating on. Dayato Vishayanasya Sang. In the Bhagavatam, there's it's mentioned 5 times, this particular verse, which is a lot of times for one verse to be mentioned. Of course, it's not mentioned verbatim, but more or less. That material existence, dreamlike material existence, means suffering and everything that's involved in material existence, will not stop unless one learns how to not meditate on the objects of the senses. So the dream-like material existence will continue as long as one does not give the business of meditating on the senses. It's like dhyayato vishayanasya. I'm forgetting. Dhyayato vishayanasya. So then we meditate on that which is important, on that which is worth being meditated on, instead of hearing some fictitious nonsense stories about, with a lot of these, aside from them being fictitious and just nonsense, so-called, they just, a lot of them don't really have a moral, to make people better people, or they don't have that. Batman and whatever, all the other stuff. Of course, a lot of times people watch nowadays, but still, some people are hearing audiobooks and reading, and right. So it's still, some people are still doing that. So instead of hearing and reading a bunch of just fictitious nonsense, better hear about Krishna's pastimes or Ramayana. Hear about that rather than all this other nonsense that has no value ultimately, and whether even now, not ultimately, just no value at all, ultimately or not ultimately. Like people are really attached to reading, some people of course, but probably millions of people, really attached to reading romance novels. And just better hear about Krishna's pastimes. There's also romance there, transcendental. You gotta be a little careful with it, but there's also there. So better meditate on these things. This is, or Srila Prabhupada, better meditate on Srila Prabhupada. There's so many wonderful books about Srila Prabhupada, and they're coming out. Hopefully more devotees produce more and more and more as the time goes, but Prabhupada disciples who had direct contact with him, but so amazing, actually. I always feel very enlivened reading about Srila Prabhupada. His humor, his wit, his how he deals with the devotees, and it's just amazing. And Srila Prabhupada said one time in a lecture, he said, some people, they like to hear about Krishna. I'm paraphrasing, and that's very good. But he said, but even better is to hear about the devotees of Krishna. So these are very enlivening topics. And as Srila Prabhupada said, or as Srila Prabhupada mentions in the Bhagavatam, in the 7th canto, I believe, he mentions that men are like butter and women are like fire. So what happens, you get a stick of butter and you put it by the fire. What happens? Huh? You know what happens? Come on, you know what happens. Melts. That's a very easy question. Too easy. Not worth asking, right? It melts. So, but depending on how cold it is, it may take a little time, right? Because you put it in the freezer. Because like we have a cooler, right? And we do have butter, sticks of butter, and you put it by a fire, and of course, depending on how close, because if you put it this close to the fire, it'll melt quicker. If you put it this close, right? It's going to melt quicker or slower. But depending on how cold it is and how close it is, it will take longer or quicker to melt, right? So similarly, or as Srila Prabhupada actually said about the brahmacharis and sannyasis, he said they should put a stamp on their forehead, keep in a cool place. So they don't melt. So a person may be associating closely, or man may be associating closely with the opposites, with a woman, and there may not be immediate attraction, but over time, depending on how close and how how long they're associated with the fire, then it's quicker or slower. So therefore, as Srila Prabhupada said, keep in a cool place, which means to not get too close. For those who are brahmacharis, and for those who want to be brahmacharis, and those who are sannyasis, and for those who want to be sannyasis. If you're a brahmachari and you don't want to be a brahmachari, then get close. Or if you're a sannyasi and you're sick of being a sannyasi, then get close.
After you change your cloth.
Yeah, after you change your cloth, yeah. Of course, I'm joking. Means, anyways. What do you call that word? Being sarcastic, or facetious, yeah. So means it's a sure recipe for melting. Now, of course, adhere means a sober person, by training, by education, by practice. They may be able to not melt in certain in cases, but that doesn't mean that they act whimsically or that they set a bad example. Like, hey, I'm adhere, I'm a sannyasi, so that means I could just, freely associate. They may not be affected, they may be controlled, but still, as a matter of example for others, and even for themselves, they shouldn't feel that they're free from illusion, like above these things. As Prabhupada was at at this huge mantra rock dance, and then they had a big kirtan there, and then Srila Prabhupada was walking out with the devotees. It was a late night event, and there's a bunch of hippies there and doing God knows what, a lot of drugs and other things. And then Srila Prabhupada was walking out with the devotees, and he said, okay, we're leaving this place. And then Srila Prabhupada said, this is no place for a brahmachari. So to be intelligent means to try to understand these things, and you could say, understand the pitfalls. That's what it means to be intelligent, to see the pitfalls, to understand what they are in great detail, and to try to avoid them. To avoid them. Just as if, for example, there's some airplanes flying, right? Now, there's been airplanes that have crashed for different reasons. And that's a big problem, because people are putting their trust in the airplanes that they're not going to crash, and then they crash. It's a huge problem. So there's all this investigation. Okay, why did this happen? And upon understanding why it happened, they try to prevent it in the future. So similarly, we've seen in history, we mentioned this Christian monk, we mentioned Bharat Maharaj. There's many examples. Old examples means historical examples, and more recent examples of devotees having difficulties. So to be intelligent means to understand, okay, why did they crash and burn? What was they looked like they were doing good, right? But why did they crash and burn? So try to understand that in detail. And then upon understanding it, the pitfalls, when we avoid them. That is what it means to be intelligent. To be unintelligent means we do not study the mistakes that happened historically and in modern history. And aside from not studying, therefore we don't understand them in detail, then we don't avoid them. Because even people who understand the pitfalls, it's being mentioned here, even people who understand, they have problems sometimes. What does people who do not try to understand? So we have to try to understand. And ultimately, by Krishna's mercy, Daivi Hesha Gunamayi Mama Māyā Dharatya Mameviye Prapadyante Māyā Me Tam Tarantite, that we could cross over illusion only by His mercy. But that means we have to situate ourselves in such a way as we get Krishna's mercy. Like the sun is always shining, but some places remain dark. Why? Because people have arranged it in that way. They like darkness. Like if somebody's in Tamagun, right? Sun shining, San Diego, sun shining, and they close their curtains all the time because they like darkness. So the sun's shining, but some places are still dark. So that people have to situate themselves in such a way as where they could get the benefit. So similarly, Krishna's mercy is fully available for everyone, but people have to situate themselves in such a way as that they get it. And they have to learn, and we have to learn how to not just like to serve, but we have to make service our life. Or it's not that we like to preach, but preaching is our life. There's a difference. Like, oh, I like chanting Hare Krishna. Well, or is it Hare Krishna is my life? There's a difference. So we have to learn, make that shift of I like to, this is my life, rather than hating. Like somebody came here and whatever. He was being honest, and who knows, people say all types of things, but he said, yeah, I want to join the temple. But he said, I hate to serve. I hate helping people. In many ways, it's kind of a cool statement in the sense, at least he's honest. Like there's that case of the boy, and he was going to join the Gurukul, and the teacher said, are you a Brahmin? Are you born in a Brahmin family? The boy said, I don't go. I'll check with my mother. So he checks with his mother, and he says, is my father like a Brahmin? Are we Brahmin family, this and that? And she says, I'll tell you the truth, I don't really know who your father is. I mean, she was with many men or whatever. So then he came back, this boy came back and told the son, oh yeah, I don't really know who my father is, so I can't really give you an answer. And then the teacher said, okay, you could join the ashram. He said, you're truthful. This is Brahmin quality. So at least this person wanting to join the ashram was truthful. He wasn't saying, oh, I love to serve, I love to help people. Then he joins and we see he doesn't at all. So at least he's truthful. But ultimately, we have to come to the point of liking to serve and be in our life. And as Srila Prabhupada says in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, in the purport, he says, many people who are devotees, but they do not accept Krishna at heart. They do not accept Krishna at heart. So, what does that mean? That means that one thing is that, okay, we have to accept Krishna at heart, right? We have to accept Krishna. But we also have to accept the spiritual master. We have to accept a spiritual master at heart. It means we have to have firm conviction. And for those who are struggling with faith in their spiritual master, then fine, take instruction. I mean, it's very unfortunate and it's very difficult, And I'm sorry that people have to, because it's a difficult situation, actually. But then take instruction from another guru. But you have to take instruction. You can't just say, oh, well, I listen to lectures and that's how I get my instruction. No, you have to take instruction. Srila Prabhupada said, what's the value of having a living guru? He could pull your ear. So if you're just there with your mind and your senses and your wife and your griha, who's pulling your ear? Sorry, but who's pulling your ear? You have to have a guru who will pull your ear, and if you do not accept one spiritual master, you have to accept another one. It's not an option. I mean, it's an option if you don't want to make ultimate progress, but it's not an option for somebody who wants to make progress. We have to accept Shiksha Guru. And if Diksha Guru somehow or other, it's whatever, this happened, that happened, okay, unfortunate, but you have to have Shiksha Guru. This is Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and this is personalism. We always have persons guiding us. No, we do not accept this divine inspiration. Well, we don't know if it's divine inspiration. It could be just the mind, so we have to take instruction. Okay, does anybody have any question or comments?
Thank you for the class, Balaram. My question is about sometimes we might be fully engaged in service, and in some way we can lose that opportunity. Like we can be, deviated from the full-time service. And what one should do in that case if he's not doing as much as he used to, and he fell out of his routine.
Not doing as much as they used to, huh? Well, I mean, there's different ideas behind how devotees should be engaged. I mean, also, not everyone's the same. Like just because someone is, like, let's say there's a devotee and he's really into farming, right? Working hard out there, and they say, oh, look at this lazy Brahmin. All he does is, right, just wave some incense and read some books and give some classes, but it's a different service, and it's a different nature, different service, and I mean, a lot of the times also, much of what devotees do is in some ways kind of, I don't want to say subtle, but there's like a lot of preparation before actually something happens. And then I'm not saying to spend a ridiculous amount of time planning and then just plan, and then maybe do something in the future, or do something in the future, but there's way too much planning. We plan efficiently, but that takes time. Or just talking with people, or somebody revealing their mind and something like that. Because some days, okay, I talk with this devotee, I talk with that devotee, I talk with this devotee, I talk with that devotee, I arrange, I call this person, I call that person, I call this person, I arrange these different programs for the month, or when a Swami's coming, or who's going to give the Sunday feast class, or whatever, shoot off some emails, or read, and then sometimes a person might wonder, well, what did you do? Like, where's the tangible, where's the offering that you cooked, or where's the pots that you washed, or where is, the flowers that you planted, or where's the books that you distributed? It just didn't look like you really did anything. But it's you could say subtle. The result may not, or just like giving a class, or just like a sannyasi. Okay, they travel around and they give classes, and some may say, well, what did they do? They just sat on a seat and gave some classes, but where's the result? And sometimes, like Kavi Chandra Swami was telling me, sometimes it's actually good to do things that have a clear result, like washing pots or this or that, because you could see it. Whereas sometimes you give a class and you don't really see, who's inspired or what really happened in people's consciousness. So what I'm saying is that sometimes we may start off, you could say, in Krishna consciousness, and we're doing many things, and there's results, you could say. But then maybe over time, it's in some ways more. A lot of the service may be going up like it's more like a mental kind of communication type of service, right? So it's not that the person's doing less. It's just the service has changed. Just like, okay, for a manager, he used to be a big book distributor, right? And now he spends a lot of his time on the phone, email, this and that, right? And then in some ways you're like, well, where's the result? Like, what did you do? But maybe it just takes time to see the result, right? Like I've been working, for example, sorry to use myself as an example, but I'm in my mind. Get it? Just joking. But or am I not in my mind? Anyways, so I've been working with Bhishma Dev Das. And it takes time. You go back and forth and talk, and okay, not that much time, but it's some time. It takes some time. And we're making these bookmarks. And the bookmarks will advertise the Bhagavad Gita class on one side and the Sunday feast on the other side. Or the cards, for example, we made what cards? The Sunday feast cards. So it takes time, these little things. So it may not look like much is going on with Balaram Das. He's just eating, sleeping, right? Wasting his time. But if for example, I'm doing that thing, then the result will be seen in terms of getting all these cards, right? And then devotees passing them out, and hopefully myself passing out some too. And then a lot of people will be invited to the temple, right? And then maybe someone will come and become a devotee, and a lot of maybe things that that people do like that may not be seen by devotees or people in general. And you could say even if they don't see it, how can they appreciate it, right? But preaching means also that, doing things like that. It doesn't mean just preaching means hitting the streets. That's there, of course. But there's also other types of preaching, like Shama Sundar. Tamal Krishna Goswami was talking about Shama Sundar, and how he was one of the biggest preachers in ISKCON. And then His Holiness Giraj Swami said to Tamal Krishna Goswami, "Oh, I've never seen him give class." And then Tamal Krishna Goswami said that preaching doesn't mean just giving class. He said there's other things. Like, for example, Shama Sundar Prabhu arranged the whole Cross Maidan festival, which thousands of people came. But he was like a back seat person. He wasn't giving class, but he was arranging things. So that could be there, that one may seem very busy at one point with, you could say, direct, tangible results, but then later, maybe it's more subtle, the results. That could be there. But there could also just be fallen into laziness, which laziness is just really bad. I don't know if it's the worst sin, but it's bad. Because, I don't know, for some reason, anyways. So yeah, we have to push ourselves. And a lot of the times, or at least sometimes, we may not have people pushing us, so we have to push ourselves. like, okay, we join and got people maybe pushing us. Okay, hey, get up, whatever, wash the pots or do this or go out on Sankirtan, this and that. But then you become a little senior, whatever, right? You keep on going. And then there could be a stage where it may be optional, I guess you could say. What you do, what you do not do. I mean, sometimes even in going to class, for example. Like, I don't know if I stopped going to class, I don't know how many devotees would criticize me verbally. I know some would do that mentally, but maybe some verbally too, and who knows, maybe they complain, you're supposed to be the ashram leader, you have to go to class. But maybe if you're a senior devotee and you're not in a position where you're supposed to be the ashram leader or something like that, maybe you can skip out of class because no one's pushing you, or maybe they're scared to push you. Scared in the sense that, oh, it's not etiquette, or he's too senior, I can't push him. So what to speak if you come in a situation of leadership where you have all different types of positions, and you have age, you have all different types of things going. Who's going to push you, right? Of course, then you have your peers. Hopefully they push you. But sometimes you're in situations where you may not be surrounded by peers, and then you have to push yourself. Therefore, the training of brahmachari life in the early stages is very important, because then you learn what it means to be a brahmachari. And then when you get older, then you know, I'm falling off course. I'm not really up to standard. So that's the hope, that people are trained early, and then later on, they, if they are tempted by laziness or māyā or whatever it is, then they'll know I'm falling off course. And then if that doesn't work, if they don't have enough drive, then hopefully they have some peers around who will tell them. And that's the problem with Bharat Maharaj. She didn't have any peers around who could tell him, hey, you're in māyā. You're off course. So I know that was a very long, drawn out, but I don't know what you want to say as like a one-liner for your question, that the essence of it?
Yeah, like how do we pull ourselves back?
Well, how do we pull ourselves back? We have to have enough, from that early training, we have to have enough drive and have enough sense to pull ourselves back. And then you say, well, what if we don't have that? Well, we're in trouble. Therefore, we need peers. And if our false ego is so strong and so powerful that our peers don't want to help us, they feel they can't, then we're in trouble. So it's either from ourselves, because you could say, oh, well, Krishna, right? Well, Krishna, he is arranging Shiksha gurus, Diksha gurus, peers to help us. Now, if we don't have enough sense to help ourselves, that's bad. Now, if we don't have enough sense to take guidance from our peers or encouragement, that's also bad. And if we're also not taking from our Shiksha gurus, another bad thing, and Diksha guru, another bad thing, and then we're just I would say we're not absolutely lost, but we're slowing down heavily. We're in trouble, actually. So in other words, we have to be humble. We have to take shelter. We have to take instruction from the Diksha guru, the Shiksha guru. We have to take encouragement from our peers. And the best, I would say the best, but one of the most, you could say, valuable things that a devotee could actually have is just their own drive. Because then they don't have to have everyone always checking on them and, all right, he's fallen off again. Okay, this way, this way. Some time passes. Oh, he's fallen off again. It's just, Best is if they have their own drive and their own determination and sense, actually. And that's what it means to be a pure devotee, or that's what it means to be a good disciple, actually. It's not that the spiritual master always has to keep on checking. Ad infinitum, forever. I mean, he does, and there's some relationship there, but it shouldn't have to be like a constant struggle of for an ashram, for example, the best ashram is an ashram where you don't have to check on anyone. That's the best. I've never seen such an ashram. Brahmacharya ashram. There's always somebody you got to check on. And there's always someone who doesn't want to be checked on. There's someone who doesn't want to be checked on, and there's always someone that you have to check on. Always. Where are they? Why aren't they here? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? On and on and on. But if you have devotees who are just learn how to be just enthusiastic, determined devotees, and of course that doesn't mean they don't need emotional support and guidance and encouragement and help. We all need that. But it means that it's not this constant kind of what do you call when somebody's very what do you call high maintenance? Very high maintenance. So that's the best ashram. And then that ashram could really thrive, and we could help a lot of people and become leaders in our own sense. Because leaders means that they've overcome their problems more or less, and more than less. And that means they could focus on others. But you get an ashram where everybody's just like struggling, or if they just always need to be checked on, it's very difficult because all the energy just goes to them. So it's tough. So that's why sometimes you get these ashrams in India that really can flourish. One of the reasons is they have these strong brahmacharis there. They're really strong. I mean, strong in like knowledge and renunciation and service, enthusiasm. They're really strong. And you get all of them together, and there's like not just like one or two or three, there's like 5, 10, 15 of them. It's like powerhouse. And then they get these young men joining, and because there's all these strong brahmacharis there, who are very senior actually, 10, 20, more than 10, 20, 30, 40 years, strong brahmacharis, they very easily help the young men. Young men are very inspired, and of course India is a whole other dynamic, but it's easy to have an ashram like that. Of course, they still have their problems, this and that, but so that's the idea, to try to have that as much as possible. And it doesn't mean we have to become 30-year, 40-year devotees before that could happen. That could happen now, soon. So we need a strong core of brahmacharis. We're talking about the ashram here. Strong core of brahmacharis, and then the ashram could go more smoothly. So, anyways.
So just another question real quick. In terms of leadership, would you say that leaders would be those people who are successfully going through, whatever service they're doing for a long period of time, and who can be successful at doing that? Sorry.
Well, that's one aspect of leadership, steadiness. But leaders have to they have to lead by example. They have to lead by example. But the problem is sometimes you may lead by example, and then people don't follow. That's modern, right? And sometimes the problem comes unless you're like in a formal role of leadership. You have to be a sannyasi. You have to be a guru. You have to have some big name, right? And then people will follow, more likely follow. You'll get more of a following, even if it's, I would say, heartfelt or mechanical, but because you're there, because Maharaj is there in class, for example, big long name, because he's there in class, I'll attend. Just because he's there. I may not want to. I may want to go eat or sleep or whatever. I may want to read. May want to have my own class, right, or whatever. Read. I think the Bhagavatam classes are too neophyte for me. May want to read Jaiva Dharma or whatever. But okay, I'll go because he's there. That's the value of sometimes accepting these positions, is because if you do something, even though people may not want to do it because of, you could say, bad tendencies, still they'll do it because that person's doing it. But sometimes you don't have the position, and they think, oh, well, he's like me, and all right, I could go, I don't have to go, and we're kind of the same, and maybe that's true to a degree, or maybe that's true completely, but if you accept some role or position, then it's okay, I'll go, he's there. So, but the real thing of a leader is that the most important thing, they have to teach by example, and they have to display, they have to show what it means to be Krishna conscious, right? That's what they have to do. So we're not into all this leadership, training people to be a bunch of politically correct, nice people. I mean, there's many politically correct, nice demons. But devotees could be full of good qualities, actual good qualities, and Krishna conscious, which is the most important one. So the most important part of being a leader is being Krishna conscious, which from Krishna conscious, all the good qualities that are necessary for leadership follows. Not that we focus on all these good qualities, but we're not really surrendering to Krishna, or we don't really agree with what Prabhupada says in his books. And if it was up to us, we'd change it. Not that that's leadership. That's some mixed, mundane, something going on there. Okay, so he's coming out of the kitchen, emerging out of the kitchen.
Hare Krishna, Balaram. I asked you yesterday, and you said that you would answer in today's class, but then I kind of remembered when I heard it back there. I just want to know what are the qualities of a leader, like, and then also because they say like, oh, you know, you're pleasing Krishna when you please the authorities, and so like you want to please your temple commander or guru, but you got to confide to them. So how do you know what's a leader actually? Because like you could always, somebody tells me to jump, I'm like, okay, I'll jump because I want to please you, but although they might not be the ideal leader sometimes. So.
Well, Srila Prabhupada said that we should follow, right? We have to follow. Anyways, to see imperfections in people is no surprise. I mean, it's hard to find anyone who doesn't have some imperfections or perceived imperfections. Because sometimes, or you could say perceived faults, means we're perceiving the faults in them. Maybe they don't exist, but we're perceiving them, right? But in some cases, in a lot of cases, they do exist. So it's not a surprise to see them. But Srila Prabhupada wants us to cooperate. So if we just are always running here and there trying to find a perfect situation with perfect devotees, it's difficult. We're in the material world. So we just have to work with each other and cooperate and do our best to try to spread the Sankirtan movement. And yeah. But in terms of the qualities of a leader, there's many qualities that they have to have, which are, you could say, mostly the 26 qualities of a devotee. Ultimately, that's what a leader should have, which you'll find in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So you could study that, or you could look it up on the Veda base, 26 qualities of a devotee. They should have those. Now, what if they don't? What if my temple commander or this person or that, what if they do not have those qualities? Or maybe they have some, or they have this one 20%, but they still need another 80% or whatever. So that's no surprise, but still we have to work with them. We have to deal with them, we have to work with them, and hopefully by the practice of Krishna consciousness, they will manifest more over time, and hopefully we will too. So there's also great qualities of a disciple. I mean, if you read in the Hari Bhakti Vilas what it means to be a disciple, you might mistake it for the qualifications of a guru. Because there are high qualifications to be a disciple, actually, also. And as Rupa Goswami explains in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it says that a devotee on the level of bhava, this is preliminary stages level of God, they may have defects. Just like the moon has spots, similarly a devotee on the level of bhava may have defects in their character due to the past. But still they're giving off illumination, so they shouldn't be rejected. Now, of course, we shouldn't use this as, hey, well, they say even a devotee on the level of bhava has some defects, so hey, back off, I got my defects, and I'm happy with them. But we should also understand our defects and try to work on them. And if we become in position of leadership, if we enter the position of a leadership, we shouldn't make excuses like, hey, well, I have defects and that's just how I am. But we should recognize the defects and try to get rid of them. So, yeah. But unless your authorities ask you to, if they say, hey, Prabhu, it's a festival day, we need help, can you spend a little more time washing pots or kind of cutting up vegetables or something? And you say, I've been analyzing you, and you don't seem so humble.
I see about 12 out of
Yeah. I see about 12 out of 26 qualities. So
That's being lenient.
Yeah, that's being like lenient and compassionate. What do you call that? What starts with a C? Courteous or generous? Yeah, generous. It's being generous. It's about 12. So I don't know. I'm kind of second guessing you here. Do you have my best, wishes in mind, and like my best? Looking at your eyes right now, I can see some selfishness. I'm not doing it. I'm going to go to the beach and go surfing, whatever. So unless they ask you to do something that's just absolutely unreasonable, and most of the times when devotees ask us, to do things, it's within the realm of devotional service. And even if you say, hey, they're not being considerate of my health or my this or that, or that may be some case like that. But ultimately, devotional service is good. It's good for us. And the more we do is actually the better. It actually uplifts us. So, yeah. If they go ask you to, rob a bank, or they say, hey, we just got somebody donated all these marijuana plants. I guess they thought they were tulsi. Do you think you could sell them? And then we'll take that profit and we'll buy books. Unless they start introducing all types of different things like that, then usually it's fine what they're trying to encourage us to do. There has been cases of devotees selling drugs. Common. Not common, but hopefully not common. I was in Oregon, when I saw this guy at the grocery store. I was picking up some vegetables there or whatever, visiting my family there, and then I saw he had tulsi beads on. I said, oh, interesting. And but he kind of looked at me, but he was kind of like avoiding me. I thought it was kind of weird, so I went up to him. I said, Hare Krishna. He said, oh, Hare Krishna. And I said, what's going on, this and that? And he said, yeah, I live here in Oregon, and I work on a marijuana or weed farm. He said, I grow. He said, I don't smoke it, but I just grow it and sell it. So, but anyways, he kind of felt ashamed, I could see. Which, of course, I don't think I'm convinced Srila Prabhupada wouldn't want devotees doing that. But unless they start introducing all different types of things like that are like clearly wrong, most of the times devotees will not, everything will just be in the realm of devotional service. So. But yeah, the 26 qualities of a devotee. And the most important one is to be surrendered to Krishna out of those 26 qualities. So even if a devotee is lacking in all those other qualities, but if they have that surrender to Krishna, that's the most important. And as Prabhupada said, Apichet Sararachayo Bhajate Mamanandipak, that even a person may be engaged in sinful or abominable activities, if they're fixed in their determination, they're considered to be a sadhu. So even if somebody has all the bad qualities, if they're sincerely, seriously engaging in devotional service and trying to surrender to Krishna, despite all those bad qualities, then they're sadhu. Of course, they're sadhu and say that maybe they need more work, or we need more work, but still sadhu. So we offer our respects. Okay, Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.